Hi, I'm Megan. I use Ambleside Online, and I have 3 daughters, 10, 6, and 2, and they're in Y1 and Y4 for fall of 2020. So I've seen in different groups and forums the idea of dictation. What does that look like in your home? And I think it's hard to wrap our minds around. I'm going to put some links in the description box so that you can go and check out some more podcasts and articles. And even some possible examples of what you might use. But I just wanted to say how we do it in our home. And based on A Delectable Education and their research, they found that Charlotte Mason was doing dictation about 3 times a week for about 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and 30 minutes for starting in about Form 2. So that is what I will be doing with my older daughter, and she was actually in Y3 last year, but because she's 4th grade age, we started with dictation towards the end of the year, maybe like the last term. So I think around 9 or 10 is generally when you would start. And dictation is taking a passage. This child will take a passage, and we use the Simply Charlotte Mason Spelling Wisdom, which I love. I was a little bit hesitant to buy something when I felt like I can do that myself, but it's really great. Ours has been kind of written in a little bit, but a proverb on starting. We have on money, never spend your money before you have it. Luke 10:7, the laborer is worthy of his hire. Happy Thought by Robert Louis Stevenson, which was a fun one for her to discover because with Y1 we had been reading Stevenson. The world is so full of a number of things that I'm sure we should all be as happy as kings. So we have all these great wisdom, sayings, proverbs, and they get a little bit longer, as you can see towards the end of book 1. You're looking at longer passages, but it's an easy way to teach spelling and punctuation. And so we spend our first 10-minute block looking at the particular passage together, and I'll read it first. I'll have my daughter read it, and then she'll look and see what words are there that she thinks she's going to get tripped up on. And I will tell you, she was not a natural speller at all. I suppose she was natural in that all of her words were exactly how they would sound, but they obviously were not all correct. So she has just in one term really improved her spelling through this method, and she will find whatever the word happens to be, and she'll look at the word, close her eyes, and picture it in her mind until she can see the word. And she'll go through the whole passage like that with the words that she finds that might trip her up. And then if she hasn't come across one that I think is going to be hard for her, I will point that out. And we can write it on a whiteboard. Sometimes you can write the whole word and then erase one letter at a time and then ask them if they can picture it. It's a great tool to also teach grammar, just a gentle introduction to grammar and punctuation. So they have to reproduce whatever the passage is. So if we're going to look at books are the best of things, well used, semicolon, abused, comma, among the worst, by Ralph Waldo Emerson, she would have to know where that appropriate punctuation went. And so that's another piece that she's looking at. And when we say it, we're also obviously pausing in the correct places. So she's as she's listening and repeating after me in that beginning stage, she's recognizing, okay, that's where we put a comma, that's where we put a semicolon. And I will speak not exaggerated, but I will make sure that there's a clear pause when I dictate. So after she's looked at all of her words and we've gone over the punctuation, and in the beginning you're obviously explaining if they don't know, well, this is a period, this is a semicolon, this is a dash. Then you ask them if they're ready. They can look at the passage again, and then we have actually I have it upstairs, but she has a bound notebook where she has her final dictation. So sometimes she wants to write things, and she'll even use this as copy work, which I'll get back to in a minute, but sometimes she'll want to write it out, the whole thing, a couple of times, and then we have a final notebook that we use just for her final dictation when it's the real thing. So I will say, okay, put your put your book away, and I will dictate the passage in small chunks at first, especially. And as they get older and they're more used to the method, you can give them longer and longer chunks, but you only repeat it once. And this can be really hard for some kids. But the idea is that we're training their habit of attention too. Because how many times have we called our child's name, called our child's name, called our child's name? Maybe we had to raise our voice. And they don't tune in if they know that we're going to call their name several times. And it's the same with something like this. We want them to know that this is a time that they're listening and that they're showing us their best effort. So once they have finished writing down their passage or their sentence, we look at it, and then we can go back over any words that they may not have spelled correctly or any punctuation. And a lot of times I've been able to say, why don't you read that again to yourself? Do you think you're missing anything? They might miss a word, and I would say probably 90% of the time, 95% of the time, she's able to self-correct. So we occasionally will do this in one sitting, and I believe that when you look at Charlotte Mason's volumes, that she really wanted this to be done in one sitting. So sometimes in the beginning, I think at least it takes a little bit of time to get used to the process and the rhythm, and it may take you 2 sessions. So I think it's really up to what works best for your family. And but your goal is not to be dragging this out, a spelling list for the week to study and use manipulatives. You're really taking the art of memory and using it to your advantage. And at first I was skeptical, thinking, is she really going to remember something that she just did like in one day? But honestly, the spelling wisdom, and this is again why I chose this particular book, was because she incorporates 12,500 words and 6,000 most frequently used words in the English language. So she's covering a lot here, and it was just one less thing that I had to do myself, even though I do love to do things myself. So we're Ambleside online users, but love Simply Charlotte Mason for this. So, and you can also use this as copy work, as I mentioned before. So copy work is where you're learning to make the strokes of the word. And so it would take a little bit more time, because if you're trying to use something like this for a year 1 student for copy work, you would want to rewrite the passage in your own hand, because it's obviously a little bit challenging to, sorry, all my writing in here. It's a little bit challenging for a child to look at, where are we here? A penny saved is a penny earned. That's not how we would write. And some people also choose to do handwriting, so you can write that out in your child's notebook, and then they're copying those strokes. And if you have a very, very beginner, you want to start literally with, upstrokes, downstrokes, and then move on to words, and then move on to sentences. So I think that's probably all for dictation, but as your children are moving up through the forms, I think there's 6 volumes here, and it takes them all the way to 12th grade. So if you have older students, you can certainly jump in a little bit later if you want them to have more complex sentences and passages to copy from. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments box, or if there's anything else that you would like to hear about. Thanks.